up! I've served you long enough!
Amina, I was only trying to remind you gently.
All you do is give orders. You're useless.
You're watching Afritalis ATK. This story reminds us that not every wound lives on the skin. Some sacrifices stay hidden until it's already too late to repay them. Sometimes the person we lash out at is the very one who loves us the most. And their scars become a reminder. Cherish the hands that once lifted you up before life forces you to pay the price for forgetting them. Where are you watching from? Share your location below Lagos, Abuja, the US, or anywhere in the world so Afritalis ATK can see which corner of the earth this story has touched. Don't forget to subscribe to Afritalis ATK. If this story made your heart pause for a moment, hit subscribe and continue the journey with us through more powerful, real-life lessons. And now, let's begin today's story, shall we? Inside the vast mansion in Ikoyi, Lagos, laughter echoed across the elegant dining hall. Crystal glasses clinked lightly, and the aroma of roasted chicken, jollof rice, and pumpkin pie blended with the sweet vanilla scent of candles, creating the warm, picture-perfect atmosphere people imagine when they think of Thanksgiving. Amina stood at the end of the table, her silk dress hugging her slender frame. The diamond necklace on her neck caught the chandelier light, scattering it in tiny stars. She scanned the room, chest swelling with pride. From the slums of Ajegunle to a mansion in Ikoyi, if people called it a miracle, she didn't bother correcting them. "Our daughter-in-law looks like a Nollywood star," an aunt teased, raising her glass toward Amina. Amina smiled, lips curved exactly like the photos she posted on Instagram. Everything felt perfect, until her gaze brushed past the wheelchair at the head of the table. Mama Zara sat there, her small figure wrapped in a deep purple kaftan. She had spoken little throughout the meal, only smiling and nodding at guests, her frail hands resting neatly on her lap. The candlelight flickered against the old scars on her face, giving her an air both regal and fragile. But to Amina, that wheelchair felt like a dark shadow hanging over her new life. "Tund, can you ask Mama to rest early?" Amina whispered to her husband. "She keeps watching me like she's evaluating something." I don't like it." Amina. Tund, sharp in his tailored suit, squeezed her hand gently under the table. "She's just tired, babe," he murmured. "It's been a long day." Amina bit her lip. Tired? She was the one who should be exhausted juggling guests, smiling endlessly, and pushing Mama's wheelchair whenever she needed to move. His relatives only saw a dutiful daughter-in-law, but none of them had ever had to bathe her, change her clothes, or endure Mama's morning frowns. "Can we have a toast?" An uncle's voice boomed, snapping Amina out of her thoughts. Conversation faded. Glasses were raised. The lights dimmed slightly, leaving the candles to dance along the long table. "Tonight," the uncle said, "we give thanks for family, for blessings, for life. And for Mama, the pillar of this house." All eyes turned to Mama Zara. She adjusted herself with effort and smiled as everyone applauded. Amina lifted her glass as well, but inside, gratitude had already curdled into something sharp and bitter. The dinner resumed. Talks of investments, politics, and real estate buzzed around the table. Amina slowly found herself pushed out of the conversation. The numbers, the companies, the deals meant nothing to her. She checked her watch, then her phone, notifications from Instagram popping one after another. "Amina." Mama Zara's voice was soft, but unmistakably directed at her. Amina turned. Mama had maneuvered her wheelchair closer, her aged eyes fixed on her through the candlelight. "Yes, Mama?" Amina replied, forcing a polite smile. "You bought 3 new handbags this week?" Mama asked, not scolding, just asking. Amina froze for half a second. "Did Tun tell you?" She let out an awkward laugh. "Just small gifts for myself, Mama. I mean, I'm a billionaire's wife." Some cousins laughed along. But Mama Zara didn't. "Amina," she said slowly, Tund is under great pressure. His work is not as simple as you think. Money does not grow on trees. You need to spend less. Think more about this family. The words, spoken in front of everyone, hit Amina like a slap. A few murmurs rose around the table. She felt naked, like someone had ripped away the silk curtain she used to hide her past in Mejegino and exposed it to the whole room. "Mama," Amina said, her voice turning cold, "what did I do wrong? I take care of you every day. I host guests, I smile. I do everything a daughter-in-law in a powerful family is expected to do. I don't ask anyone for money except my husband." Mama remained calm. "Caring for me is not a debt you're repaying. It is responsibility. But wastefulness, that is a dangerous habit. I don't want it to consume you." The sound of cutlery suddenly felt too loud. The air thickened. Across the table, Tund frowned. "Mama, maybe this is not—" "No, let her finish," Amina snapped, eyes glistening, not with tears, but with rage. Years of swallowed resentment cracked open. "What have I done all these years?" Amina burst out. "Pushing your wheelchair, bathing you, obeying every tiny command. Meanwhile, everyone thinks I only know how to spend money. If I'm so useless, why don't you hire a nurse and leave me alone?" Silence gripped the room. Mama Zara leaned back, breathing deeply. The candlelight softened her expression, but Amina no longer saw softness. "Amina," she whispered, "your anger is speaking for you. Stop instructing me." Amina shouted, no longer holding back. Her voice ricocheted across the room, bouncing off the walls and ceiling, shattering the carefully crafted atmosphere of warmth and celebration. Children jerked their heads toward her. Guests froze mid-bite. "Amina, enough," Tund whispered. But it was already too late. Every sleepless night, every dropped spoon, every midnight call from Mama's room, every memory Amina had buried rose like a dark, drowning tide. "You want me to stop spending?" Amina scoffed, circling the table until she stood beside Mama's wheelchair. "Fine, I won't waste money on useless things anymore." Right in front of her was the tall candle in the center of the table, the flame steady, unaware it was about to become a weapon. In a blind surge of fury, Amina grabbed the silver candlestick. Metal screeched across wood. "Amina!" Tund yelled, standing so fast his chair toppled. "What are you doing?" But Amina's breath was ragged, her eyes burning. Pride, shame, fury, everything twisted into something unrecognizable. "All you do is give orders," she growled, the candle trembling in her hand. "You do nothing. You just sit there. You're the useless one." And before the entire family, in a single second, she would spend the rest of her life wishing she could undo. Amina pressed the burning candle to her disabled mother-in-law's cheek. The flame touched skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the air instantly. Mama Zara screamed raw, piercing her wheelchair, jolting violently, slamming into the table. Shouts, chairs crashing, people screaming names in terror. And that was the moment that destroyed everything she had built. No one knew that. Before becoming the daughter-in-law of one of the wealthiest families in Lagos, Amina was nothing more than a shadow drifting between the ramshackle houses of the Adjiginal slums. Back then, she woke up every morning to honking horns, children arguing, and the smell of motor oil rising from the uneven dirt road that cut through the settlement. Her bare feet were calloused from running on scorching ground all day. Her most frequent meal was watery porridge. Her only dream was to escape, even just once. People looked at Amina and saw only a thin girl covered in coal dust from hauling loads at the port. But if anyone had cared to look deeper into her eyes, they would have seen something life hadn't managed to crush, a fierce will to survive, a desperate hunger to save herself. And ironically, the person who noticed it wasn't just anyone. Mama Zara, the powerful CEO of Adnuga Group, met Amina one dry season afternoon while inspecting the charity project. Among the children chasing the company convoy, Amina stood still, her eyes wary, yet unbowed by the display of wealth before her. That caught Mama's attention. "Bring that girl to me," she said to her aide. Amina was escorted over, legs trembling, eyes flickering between fear and defiance. Mama looked her over from head to toe without a trace of contempt. "What is your name?" she asked. Anna," the girl whispered, her voice rough and torn. "What do you want most in this world?" Amina bit her lip, then answered with raw honesty. "To live like a real human being." The response stunned Mama into silence. She had met hundreds of job seekers, thousands of people begging for opportunity, yet none had ever answered like that. Not money, not power, but the right to live with dignity. Later that day, sitting in the cool, dim interior of her car, Mama said quietly, "That girl, I want to take her home." From a Jegino to the Ikohi mansion was a journey equal to an entire lifetime. When Amina first stepped into the massive house, she was so overwhelmed she didn't dare touch anything. Every step felt like it might leave dirt on the gleaming wooden floor. But Mama Zara didn't bring her home to make her a maid. She gave Amina her own room, bought her books, hired tutors. "You're not lacking intelligence," Mama told her. "You're only lacking someone who believes you deserve a real chance." Amina studied day and night. Mama often sat on the sofa watching her read, her gaze warm yet firm. She taught Amina everything: how to walk, how to sit, how to introduce herself, how to look someone in the eyes with confidence. Amina stumbled, made mistakes, cried. But Mama never abandoned her. Years passed. The dusty, bony girl from the port became a graceful, sharp young woman. And Mama did the unthinkable. She introduced Amina to her only son, Tund. Tund was surprised to learn that his mother had brought home an unknown girl, but he quickly grew drawn to her intelligence and unbreakable spirit. "She has something money can't buy," Mama said. "And you need someone like that beside you." Not long after, Amina became Tund's wife, the future matriarch of a business empire. From a slum girl to the Adnuga family's daughter-in-law, her story was told as a modern miracle. But only Mama and Amina knew the truth. It wasn't magic. It was kindness, faith, and countless sacrifices. Then everything changed because of an accident Amina could never fully remember. It happened on the night Mama brought her to the launch event of a new charity foundation. Papa had passed away long ago, leaving Mama to carry the empire on her shoulders. The event was crucial, but Mama still took Amina along so she could learn how to navigate elite society. When they exited the venue, camera flashes burst across the street. Amina, still unsteady in her new heels, winced just as a truck horn shrieked from the opposite lane. "Amina, watch out!" She barely turned her head when a strong force yanked her backward. Everything became a blur of metal grinding, screens crashing into one another, and dust exploding into the air. When she opened her eyes, Amina was lying on the pavement, an aide supporting her. Her head rang, her memory blurred. But directly ahead amid the chaos was the sight that froze everyone in horror. Mama Zara lay motionless beneath the truck. No one understood how she moved so fast. No one could explain how a woman who usually walked softly could suddenly sprint with such force. One thing was certain: if Mama hadn't pushed Amina away, the girl under that truck would have been her. The accident left Mama unable to walk. For months, only her hands could move, and eventually she relied on the wheelchair that would follow her for the rest of her life. The media called it a tragedy with a lesson. The business world called it the fall of an iron leader. But to Tund, it was the day his mother sacrificed her legs to save the woman he would marry. And to Mama, it was simply protecting the girl she believed in more than anyone else. As for Amina, she had no idea. No one told her, because Mama made them promise never to reveal the truth. She feared Amina would feel indebted forever. She feared Amina would drown in guilt. She feared she would stop living freely. Mama wanted Amina to be happy, unburdened, not shackled by gratitude. But fate is often cruel. All Amina ever knew is that the strongest woman in her life suddenly became disabled. After an accident she couldn't remember. And Amina never learned the truth. Tund was consumed by the duties of running his family's empire. Most mornings he left before dawn, and he often returned long after the lights of Lagos shimmered across the lagoon like scattered stars. The Adenuga family controlled major industries, real estate, banking, logistics, media. Every day, Tund was buried in meetings, signings, negotiations, crisis management. He carried the weight of his father's legacy and the crushing expectations that only an heir could understand. Amina, however, lived in a world entirely different from his. She woke each morning in a bedroom as large as a hotel suite, perfumed with expensive fragrances. She chose Dior for the morning, Chanel for the afternoon, Balenciaga for the evening. Her most visited places were spas, boutiques, and photography studios. Every Instagram post she published was immaculate Zanzibar beaches, Cape Town brunches, the latest Birkin arrivals. No one scrolling through her feed would ever guess she once survived on watery porridge in a degino. Amina had become a rising influencer among Lagos's elite, her smile bright, her posture regal, her stories showcasing one constant message: she had defeated destiny. Yet within the vast mansion she now called home, one person watched her quietly every day, Mama Zara. Though her legs were useless, her mind remained as sharp as when she sat at the head of the boardroom. From her wheelchair by the office window, she issued strategic directives to Tund, reviewed documents, analyzed markets, and advised on major decisions. She no longer appeared in public, but she remained the soul of Adenuga Group. Amina had seen it, Mama sitting perfectly still. Yet her voice carried iron, her words shaping the future of thousands of employees. But Amina didn't see strength. She saw a burden, an old woman who needed constant care, a reminder of the poverty she once crawled out of, a shadow whispering that the life she flaunted wasn't fully hers. Inside her, the gratitude she once felt, the awe she had when she first entered this house, slowly faded. Resentment crept in, then pride, then arrogance. Every time Mama called her for a glass of water, to push the wheelchair upstairs, to help her turn, Amina felt dragged away from the lavish life she believed she deserved. "Dear, would you bring me the notebook on the table?" Mama asked one day, her voice soft but clear. Amina was adjusting her lighting for a live stream. She glanced over, irritation playing in her eyes. "Mama, just call the nurse." "I'm busy." "Amina, I don't want to disturb the nurse for something so small." "Then don't call me." Her words were sharp as a blade. Mama fell silent. And in that brief moment, she understood, without needing it spoken, that the girl she once lifted from the mud was drifting farther from her than ever before. One afternoon, just after Tund left for a meeting, Mama called Amina into her room. "Amina, could you open the window for me? I'm feeling a bit suffocated today." Amina held a brand new handbag priced so high she didn't dare say it aloud. She raised an eyebrow but didn't move. "Could you open it, please?" Mama repeated, gentle yet tired. Amina snapped. "Mama, can't you do something for yourself? I have to serve you every single day. Do you know how exhausting that is?" Mama froze. Her eyes already scarred by the accident and years of pain looked at Amina with a sorrow deeper than words. "I only ask small things of you," she murmured. "You don't have to feel." "Yes, I do feel that way," Amina shouted. "You don't do anything except sit there and order people around. I have to take care of you like some servant." A heavy silence dropped between them. Then Amina spoke the sentence she would one day regret so deeply it would age her soul. "You're useless. I have to wait on you hand and foot." Mama closed her eyes, the words hurting more than the accident that paralyzed her. "You don't understand, Amina," Mama whispered, voice trembling. If you want proper care, hire someone else. I'm not your nurse." The door slammed behind Amina, leaving Mama alone in the bright yet freezing room. She looked down at her frail hands, trembling not from pain, but from a heart torn open by the very girl she had once bet her hopes on. In the days that followed, Amina sank deeper into the illusion of her new life. She believed she deserved the peak she'd reached. She believed her wealth was her own achievement. She believed Mama was nothing but an obstacle to her happiness. But in her blindness, she failed to see the truth. Everything she had, the diamond rings, the mansion, Tun's devotion, her social status, began with one act of kindness from Mama. One chance, one hand that lifted her from the dirt. One love that not every mother gives to a daughter-in-law. But Amina had forgotten all of that. She didn't know that the woman she now treated as a burden was the very person who had created her new destiny. Back to the moment of horror. In the instant the candle touched her skin, time shattered into pieces. Flames burst across Mama Zara's cheek, small at first, but enough to turn the warm Thanksgiving night into a living nightmare. The stench of burning flesh curled into the aroma of roasted chicken and pumpkin pie, making several relatives nearby gag on the spot. Mama screamed a sound unlike anything Amina had ever heard. It was hoarse, cracked, rising into a sharp pitch before breaking in half like a violin string pulled too tight. The wheelchair lurched violently, one wheel slamming into the table leg, toppling a wine glass. Dark red liquid streamed across the white tablecloth, racing toward the flames now licking along its edge. "Fire! Fire!" someone shouted. The candle fell, igniting the fabric almost instantly, as if the flames had been waiting for their chance. Amina's hand dropped the candlestick. She stumbled back, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear out of her chest. Spoons and forks clattered onto plates, chairs screeched backward, and children wailed in terror. Tund moved before anyone else could. He ripped the burning tablecloth off the table and hurled it to the floor. Then, with his bare hands, he slapped at the flames crawling across Mama's clothes. The smell of singed fabric, scorched skin, and spilled wine fused into a suffocating haze. "Bring water! Call an ambulance! Put out the candles!" Voices overlapped in chaos. Mama slumped forward, half of her face blistering, the old scars from the accident now swallowed by new flames. Her fingers clutched the armrests so tightly the knuckles turned ghostly white. "Amina." She managed her voice, a desperate mix of question and plea, before fading into agony. Amina stood frozen at the head of the table, eyes wide, watching everything unravel in slow motion. She saw Tund lift his mother into his arms, his whole body trembling, his hands red and raw from stamping out the fire. She saw relatives scrambling, some fetching wet cloths, others clearing a path, but Amina heard none of it. Her ears rang with a single sentence, echoing over and over. "You're useless. You're useless." She had said it. She had done this. "Amina." "Call the ambulance," an aunt screamed. Amina jolted, blinking as if waking from a trance. Her fingers fumbled with the phone, her voice shaking as she gave the address, eyes still glued to Mama's trembling, burned body in Tund's arms. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and cold white light. Mama Zara was rushed straight into the emergency room. The doors slammed shut behind her, cutting her off from the cries, the prayers, the panic of the family. Amina sat on the plastic bench, staring at her hands still streaked with dried white candle wax. It looked like evidence glued to her skin, impossible to wash away. Time stretched endlessly. Tund paced the hallway, his shirt singed in several spots, his hands starting to blister. A nurse had already tended to his burns, but he seemed unaware or uncaring. His eyes never left the sealed emergency room doors, silent and devouring, like the mouth of a beast swallowing everything he loved. After a long while, he stopped walking. He turned toward Amina. She tried to avoid his gaze, but she couldn't. When Tund stepped closer, Amina finally looked up and her breath caught. The eyes that met hers were no longer the eyes of the man who once held her close, who once shared a thin mattress in their early days, who once promised to protect her. Now his gaze held something heavier than disappointment, deeper than anger. It was pain. "You," Tund rasped, voice breaking. "What have you done? To the woman who saved your life?" The words hit her like a stone dropped into a hollow chest, crushing everything inside. "Saved my life?" She stammered, gripping the edge of the bench so hard her nails bent. Tund let out a short, hollow laugh, empty, bitter. "You don't remember," he said. "Of course you don't. You never tried to." He sat across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. He stayed silent for a moment, gathering the last pieces of strength he had left. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bloodshot. "That day," he began, sounding like a man reliving a nightmare he never escaped, "Mama took you to the launch of the charity foundation. Remember? You'd only been living with her a few months. You were obsessed with the dress she bought you. You spun in front of the mirror half the evening." In Amina's mind, faint images flickered like a radio catching a weak signal. A long hallway, flashing lights, reporters calling Mama's name. "When you two stepped outside," Tund continued, "a truck lost its brakes. The driver shouted. People scattered. You froze in the middle of the road. Mama saw it. She ran as fast as she could. You know she rarely walked fast, but that night, she tried." His hands clenched together, shaking. "She shoved you out of the way and took the full impact herself. You passed out. When you woke, she was already in a hospital bed, and from that day on, she never walked again." Amina felt something twist inside her, tight, brutal, merciless. "No," she whispered. "No, I didn't know." Tund's gaze cut into her, raw and bleeding. "You didn't know," he repeated, "because she made us promise not to tell you. She said if you found out, you'd feel chained to her forever. She didn't want that. She wanted you to live freely, to feel worthy of this new life, not trapped by debt." Tears blurred Amina's vision. "All this time, every time she called me, I was annoyed. Every time she needed help, I felt like a servant. Every time she advised me, I thought she was controlling me. Her voice collapsed under its own weight. Tund suddenly stood unable to sit still anymore. He pointed to the emergency room doors. "The woman you called useless, the woman you burned in front of our entire family." His voice dropped to a whisper ripped straight from his breaking heart. "She's the one who took the hit for you. She's disabled because she saved you." The hallway, already quiet, fell into a deeper silence. Even the distant beeping of machines, the footsteps of nurses, the hum of fluorescent lights, all vanished into a white void around Amina. Images collided in her mind. The way Mama looked at her, never asking for thanks. The way she shielded Amina from whispers about her past. The way she always told Tund, "Be patient with her. She has walked a long road." Suddenly, everything made sense. In the most devastating way possible. Amina's knees buckled. She stood, but her legs wobbled. The hallway stretched endlessly before her. She touched the wall, searching for support, but there was none strong enough for a heart that had just fallen from grace. "No," she repeated faintly. "No, it can't be. I didn't know. I didn't." Tears streamed hot down her face, dripping onto hands that still smelled of wax and smoke. These hands, the same hands that pushed fire into Mama's face, were the hands Mama once held while lifting her out of the slums. "What have I done?" Amina whispered, collapsing to the floor, clutching her head, oblivious to everyone around her. Down the hallway, the red emergency room light glowed like a wound that wouldn't close. Inside Amina, everything crumbled. Her pride, her polished appearance, her glamorous Instagram facade, her carefully constructed life. All of it collapsed like a bomb-struck building. For the first time in years, she felt like that barefoot girl in a jegunal, small, frightened, trembling on a broken street. Except this time, there was no hand reaching out to save her from the disaster she created. Her world fell apart. The day Mama Zara woke up, half of her face was wrapped in thick white bandages. The hospital lights cast a pale glow across the gauze, making her face look as though it had split into two halves, one hidden away, the other exposed, darkened skin, old scars, and the weary lines carved by years of silent suffering. Amina stood outside the hospital room, her hands trembling so violently she had to clutch the hem of her blouse, just to hide how shattered she was inside. She wanted to step in, to speak, to apologize, anything, but her legs felt glued to the floor. Every step felt like passing a sentence on herself. No one in the family spoke to her. No blame. No comfort. Not even a glance. And that silence was colder than any accusation. All she heard was the doctor speaking to Tund. The burns are deep. The affected area is large. Her skin was already compromised from her previous accident. This time the pain will last for months, possibly years. Recovery will be extremely difficult. Amina's fingers tightened until the knuckles turned bone white. It felt like someone had slammed a fist into her chest. The air around her grew thin, too thin to breathe. The doctor walked away, the door shut behind him. That soft click sounded like the gates of hell slamming shut in front of her. Amina broke down. Not the loud, messy crying of a child, but choked sobs like an invisible hand was squeezing her throat. Tears streamed down her face, spilling until the scorching ache in her chest seemed to dissolve into each salty drop. Memories crashed over her like a storm without warning. She remembered every time Mama called her, just to ask if she had eaten. She remembered Mama's sad eyes whenever Amina left the house in glamorous clothes, but with a cold, distant expression. She remembered Mama gently saying, "Amina, don't push so hard. My back hurts." And she remembered how she ignored her, rolled her eyes, shoved the wheelchair harder, using Mama's frail body as an outlet for her irritation. Amina covered her face. The images stabbed her like 100 knives. And then she remembered the evenings. Mama sitting alone under the warm yellow lamp in the living room, watching Tund and Amina curled up together on the sofa. She didn't say much, just smiled softly. A sad, gentle smile. A smile of a mother who believed her daughter-in-law would one day carry the family legacy, be Tund's strength, become the powerful woman she once hoped to be. But Amina had used the same hands Mama once held lifting her out of a jeguino to inflict unimaginable pain upon her. Somehow, Amina's legs began to move. Slow, heavy. Each step felt like crushing shards of glass beneath her feet. She placed her hand on the doorknob. The metal was cold, too cold, reminding her she no longer belonged to the warmth behind that door. But she turned the handle anyway. Inside, the room was frighteningly quiet. The monitors beeped steadily. Soft white light fell across Mama's uncovered skin, highlighting the parts not hidden by bandages. Her eyes were open, but not looking at Amina. They were fixed on the ceiling far away, hollow, as though she had placed her heart in some empty corner no one could reach. "Mama!" Amina called out, her voice shredded. Mama Zara turned her head very slowly. Every movement seemed to hurt. Her eyes met Amina's. No anger, no blame, just exhaustion so deep it felt bottomless. And that gentleness destroyed Amina more thoroughly than any scream could have. Amina moved closer, her knees threatening to buckle. Standing beside the bed, she saw everything clearly. The charred patches of skin, the swollen, blistered wounds, the old scars eaten away by new flames. A canvas of suffering, and she was the one who signed it. Amina lifted a hand to her mouth, terrified her very breath might cause Mama more pain. She sank to her knees beside the bed, gripping the white sheet like a drowning woman clinging to the last thing keeping her afloat. "Mama," her voice cracked like a broken instrument. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. But the words only made her feel more monstrous. Not knowing didn't erase the burns. Not knowing didn't ease Mama's agony. Not knowing couldn't undo the cruel words she had hurled at her. Tears slid down Amina's cheeks and dropped onto Mama's hand. A hand that once lifted her from the dirt, once shielded her from hunger, once pushed her toward a future she never dared dream of. Now that same hand trembled faintly, as if asking, "Why? Why did you do this to me?" Amina bowed her head, sobbing. What have I done, Mama?" Mama Zara didn't blame her, but her silence became the heaviest judgment of all. In the days following surgery, Mama spoke far less. She no longer called Amina for water, no longer asked her to push the wheelchair, no longer requested the little things she used to. Every need was directed to the nurses instead. Amina still came, still stood quietly in the corner like a shadow, but Mama kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching the hospital trees sway in the wind. That silence said one thing to Amina: you may stay, but you are no longer daughter. Not yet. One afternoon, when the Lagos sunlight softened into a warm honey glow, Tund called Amina out of the room. "Mom wants to see you, alone," he said quietly. Amina's heart dropped. Her throat tightened. Her palms grew cold. When the hospital door opened again, the room was empty except for Mama propped up against pillows, one side of her face still bandaged. The other half looked older, marked by pain, but her eyes remained sharp beneath it all. "Amina," Mama said, her voice raspy like someone who had walked through a storm. Amina stepped inside, closed the door, and fell to her knees beside the bed without meaning to. "Mama," she whispered. Mama studied her for a long time. Not cold, not warm, just measuring. As if weighing what pieces of the girl before her remained untouched by pride, anger, and ambition. "I chose you," Mama began, each word pulled from a chest still aching, "because I believed you were strong. Because I saw in your eyes that day a child who had been pushed too far, but hadn't let go." Amina bit her lip, tears spilling again. "Not," Mama continued, "so you could become cruel." The words were soft as breath, but to Amina they fell like stone. She lowered her head until her forehead nearly touched the mattress, fingers gripping the sheets. "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I don't need any more sorry," Mama cut in, not loud but firm enough to slice through Amina's sobbing. "Since the night it happened, I've heard enough. Sorry doesn't heal my skin. It won't make my legs walk again. It won't bring back that Thanksgiving dinner." Her words weren't knives. They were truth, raw, merciless truth. Mama lifted her hand, still mottled with burn marks, and placed it gently on Amina's bowed head. Amina flinched at the touch. "Amina," Mama said slowly, "if you want redemption, you will not find it by kneeling here crying. Your tears save no one. If you truly regret what you've done, then stand. Protect Tund and this family for me." Amina looked up, eyes swollen. "Protect Tund?" she repeated, barely believing she still had a place beside him. "One day," Mama said, "I won't be here to guide him. I spent half my life building everything you now live among." She paused, breathing through the ache. "And the rest of my life, I had hoped to spend shaping you into a woman strong enough to stand beside him. Perhaps I taught you wrong, but if you wanted change, learn to manage, learn to think for others. Learn to live as a builder, not a guest, builder." The word echoed inside Amina's mind. Mama had once given her a home. Now she was giving her a key to a different kind of door. "Amina," Mama said softly, "I can forgive you for hurting me. But I cannot forgive you if, after all this, you stay the same. That would be the deepest insult of all." Amina broke. She dropped fully to the floor, tears soaking the sheets. "Mama, I don't deserve. None of us are ever truly deserving of our best chances," Mama replied gently. "I was not deserving of an empire. But I worked as if I was, and you must do the same. If you wish to stay in this family, live as someone worthy of the forgiveness you are asking for. No condemnation, no hatred, no banishment. Just a charge, a task, and it pierced deeper than any punishment." Amina realized she had lost the most precious thing of all, the wholehearted trust of the woman who once saved her life. From that day onward, Amina changed. The designer handbags waiting in her online cart were abandoned. Invitations to parties, brunches, and luxury events went unanswered. Live streams, unboxing videos, influencer photo shoots vanished from her feed. Followers speculated. Friends asked questions, some laughed that she was past her peak. Amina ignored it all. Each morning, she arrived at the hospital before the nurses. She helped Mama with hand exercises, read documents aloud, and listened to her analyze business reports. Numbers she once dismissed as boring became lines she copied meticulously into a notebook. When Mama slept in the afternoons, Amina followed Tun to the office. At first, employees regarded her as the decorative executive wife, but soon they noticed she took notes every detail. She stayed late reading reports later than some department heads. "Can you explain this part again?" she asked Tun one night while they reviewed expense projections. Tun stared at her for a beat. His eyes still held cracks, still held distances, but beneath them something flickered, something like surprise. Maybe the smallest fragment of hope. "Okay," he said quietly. And he walked her through it again. Amina listened, asked questions, was corrected, was frustrated, and returned the next day to learn more. She accepted being a beginner in a world she once assumed required nothing from her but a smile. At night, long after everyone slept, Amina sat alone on the rooftop terrace, overlooking the endless lights of Lagos. She remembered the early days, Mama teaching her how to hold a knife properly, how to say thank you, how to walk into a room with humility, not shame. Now Mama was teaching her again, not with words, but with the white bandages wrapped around her face. Time passed. Mama's burns slowly healed, leaving behind thick, raised scars darker and harsher than the old ones. Amina attended every bandage change. She learned not to flinch, not to cry. The only sign of the pain inside her was the crescent imprints her nails left in her palms. "Does it hurt, Mama?" she asked once, voice trembling. "Of course it hurts," Mama replied calmly. "But some pain isn't visible on the skin." Amina understood. Mama was speaking of her heart. And Amina's too. When Mama finally returned home, the mansion in Ikoyi no longer felt like a place for wine glasses and glittering parties. It felt like what it was supposed to be, a home where people failed, were forgiven, and learned how to begin again. Amina rebuilt her life piece by piece. Morning, caring for Mama. Afternoon, learning at the office. Evening, dinners with Tun discussing family, business, the future. She looked into the mirror less often. But whenever she caught her reflection in a window, a polished surface, a hospital screen, she always saw behind her, in the wheelchair, Mama's scarred face. And whenever their eyes met in that accidental reflection, Amina's heart clenched. Because even though Mama never mentioned Thanksgiving night again, even though she continued to teach and guide as if the flames had never touched her, the scars remained. And every time Amina looked at her mother-in-law's disfigured face, she felt a pain that would never fully heal. Thank you for listening to the story. If it made your heart pause for a moment, hit subscribe and continue this journey with us through more powerful real-life lessons.